Hi, welcome to another segment of a sit down with the Majority Report. I'm Senator Sonny Borelli. I'm the Senate Majority Leader, and Leo Biasucci.
And I'm Majority Leader Leo Biasucci in the House. And today we're talking budget. So who else would be the perfect person to talk about the budget?
So our next perpetrator is going to be Senator Kavanaugh, who's the Senate Appropriations Chair. Mr. Senator Kavanaugh.
Glad to be here.
So give us an idea, right? We've been talking budget for a few weeks now. The Senate and House, we've been going back and forth. How do we want to handle this? You have a governor who we'll have him throw it on the screen in a second here about she's throwing the veto stamp up, which everybody can see. She's already saying, look, I'm going to veto anything they do. So kind of give a rundown as you being the approach chair in the Senate, kind of why we went down this route and what does it mean to have a baseline budget so that people can kind of understand.
Well, we went down this route because nobody wants to have a summer crisis. Nobody wants to be confronted with the emergency and the tension and all the arguing and accusations that follow the so-called government shutdown because we don't have a budget. And the risk of this is extremely high this year because we now have a Republican legislature and a Democrat governor. So having agreement becomes much more difficult. So in order to take the worry away from the people who rely on government money, state money, we're talking about employees who need salaries, we need people who get benefits from the government, even businesses that sell goods and services. They need to know that they're going to have the money that they're due. So to avoid a government shutdown, the easiest thing is simply to enact into law what is essentially last year's budget minus the one-time expenditures. And that's still about $15 billion, which keeps the government running. That takes the pressure off of everybody. And then the next task is much smaller. That is simply to come to an agreement with the governor on how to spend the additional $1.3 billion of one-time revenue. And it could be infrastructure, it could be programs, it could be tax relief. But dealing with 1.3, knowing the government is still going to continue, seems to me to be something which everybody, especially the people, should want.
Which means keeping DPS running without any hardships and all the other state agencies without any hiccup. We're basically just keeping the trains running on time, keeping government going with that certainty. Yeah. And isn't there a 5% increase in K-12 spending in this one?
Yes, actually, there are formula increases on last year's budget because you have more students, you have inflation, and we actually even added an additional $200 million for school construction because there's a lawsuit and we want to stay on the right side of that judge.
Yeah.
No, so, Senator, let me ask you. When you look at the budget, you look at this $15 billion that you spoke about, right? We're referring to as the baseline budget because it's the baseline to keep government open. Last year, when this budget passed, this was actually a bipartisan budget, correct?
A bipartisan budget that was hailed by the Democrats and the media as being historic bipartisan kumbaya.
Exactly. So my point, I guess, is to a Governor Hobbs, wouldn't it be the right call to pass this, right? Something that she can say, look, Democrats and Republicans both agreed on this budget last year. Let's get this through so we don't have that worry of shutting down. Right, we can get this out of the way, keep government open, and then we can negotiate the rest, like you talked about. If there's a surplus, what would make her not want to sign this?
I hate to speculate, but to be cynical, some may say that an excellent bargaining wedge that the governor has is the threat of a government shutdown to get us to the table, to agree with her. But the threat of a government shutdown means you're holding the people hostage. You're holding government employees, people relying on our benefits, including schools. The schools will shut down on July 1st. So, that was a big issue with the aggregate expenditure limit, claiming we haven't overridden it soon enough, even though we still have more time, and we're going to do that. But I guess that doesn't apply to the full budget.
Right, and so Senator Borelli, also coming to you, you look at the budget and you look at her. A lot of people don't realize this, and I'll tell the viewers real quick. So the legislative duty, our one constitutional duty, is to pass a budget at the legislature, right? I mean, you can say Governor Hobbs, they say, oh, she has her budget. She's really just along for the ride. right? I mean, the negotiations will happen, but it's our job.
It's the
As the
legislature's
legislatures.
responsibility for the budget. We're the ones that dictate the budget, and then you can negotiate with the governor's office. They don't get to dictate the budget. No other agency gets to dictate the budget. We dictate the budget, and we go from there. It's our job to appropriate monies or not appropriate money. So it is our. You're right. It is our one constitutional obligation, our duty, that we pass a budget out.
And so that being said, you would think that somebody would come in as a Democrat governor with a Republican legislature. And I'll ask you guys both this. They both come in, or they come in with a Democrat. You would think she'd want to start off in a spot that would be a bipartisan budget. But when she comes in and she says she wants $40 million for illegal immigrants to go to universities, she wants to strip the border strike force, which in essence is saying, let's open our borders. She wants to get rid of ESA expansion, which is backpack funding, right? Which is a historic thing for Arizona to do. When she comes out and does that, and what message is that sending to the legislature?
Well, let's not also forget that she wants to take money that we gave to a pregnancy center for homeless pregnant women who don't want abortions. She wants to close that and send it to Planned Parenthood to give abortions. Well, all of these things are totally toxic to Republicans, but are well liked by her base. Right. I'm hoping that these initial statements by the governor were designed to calm and placate her base, to send a message that she's still going to do the things that she campaigned on, which were very liberal because she had to support her base, but that she'll quickly come around to reality and understand that she has to negotiate with a very conservative Republican legislature, and putting forward things that are total non-starters, that has to be put aside, and we have to start talking real budget.
At the end of the day, we have to govern. She has to govern. And getting back to open borders kind of thing, I mean, she's obviously very tone deaf. There was a 3-year-old in Apache Junction that OD'd on fentanyl yesterday and died. Okay, and how this child got a hold of a fentanyl-laced pill, I have no idea, and that's still under investigation. We have an epidemic of fentanyl flooding through this state, flooding through this country, and for her to have that open doors policy or the open border policy like the federal government is completely ridiculous. It's that's like criminal. I mean, it's just flat out wrong. That needs to be addressed. Now, we're very fiscally conservative legislature on the Republican side, and that's what we're responsible for. The reason why we have this surplus and a booming economy is because of the policies that we actually got in place over the last 8 years. Am I not correct on that?
Absolutely. And you don't have to be a fiscal conservative to want to go easy on the budget for the next several years, because even liberal economists are predicting that we're going to go into a recession. So don't expect any new revenue, ongoing or one time. In fact, we may experience a dip in revenue. Now, we believe that based on the sound Republican policies that made businesses extremely strong in Arizona, that we will not be hitting Arizona with the recession as strong as other places. But we're still not going to see growth, and we still will see some decline in revenue. So now is the time to tone back to the type of spending that the Republican budget is.
Well, I find it amazing that they're saying that we're going to be going into a recession. We're at the inflation rate right now is 9%. Yeah. So how are we not in a recession already? And it's going to get worse. The federal government, the Fed just raised interest rates, which means that the rates on mortgages, credit cards, all that stuff, those rates are going up. And of course, we have record inflation. I mean, a carton of eggs is $6-7 in some places. We need to get that tax relief back to the people too.
Absolutely. So I think we're at the point right now, and I think the citizens of Arizona need to really start asking that question to Governor Hobbs. Why would you veto a budget that is going to keep everything open, that's going to keep our schools open, going to keep our healthcare in place, going to keep our infrastructure in place, going to keep DPS in place, all the things that are needed to keep the Arizona running? This is a no-brainer for her to sign this. And then if she wants to play party politics, she will veto this bill, and she will tell every citizen of Arizona that I don't care about keeping the state of Arizona open. I care more about my pet projects, which are definitely left-leaning.
Well, to that point, when she says she wants to have a bipartisan conversation, the day before she released her budget, she met with the Democrat leaders the day before, and then she met with the media that morning of, and then she met with Republican leaders that afternoon.
Which we were there, right?
You were there.
John and I were both there.
That's correct. However, I got my pre-briefing from the reporters in the lobby who had already been told what the budget was before we were. So that was kind of a bad start. But hey, bygones be bygones.
Well, but were you able to even ask questions and pick it apart or find out what the reasoning is on any of that?
No, they didn't do any substantive question and answers.
Wow.
Right. So this is what's going to happen. The Senate has now is gone through committee, correct?
We
Is
voted
it gone on the board.
We voted the budget out yesterday.
So we voted out yesterday. The House is planning to do the same thing starting next week. And then it goes up to the governor for either a veto or a signature. And so hopefully you guys are going to be paying attention to what she does. Hopefully she does what's right for the best for the state of Arizona and does what's best for the people.
Senator Kavanaugh, you have anything else to add?
It's been summed up well. I'm hoping that that's the end of the majority of the budget. That'll just leave $1.3 billion in one-time monies that we can easily sit down and hash out. That's
Absolutely.
a small pile of money to give out. Then we'll do the rest of the bills and let Arizona move forward.
Sorry, we can move out supplemental bills to fund certain projects, for example, roads and infrastructure.
Absolutely.
So
Thank you guys so much for spending your time with us today at the Majority Report. Thank you, Senator Kavanaugh, for your help and your guidance and wisdom that you bring us, and Senator Borelli.
Thanks once again for joining us with the Sit Down with Majority Report. Improve your net, hire a vet.